11 minutes, I-80 to the Verge. There's congestion on the inbound Stevenson around Kedzie and approaching the Ryan. It's 24 minutes from the Veterans Memorial Tollway to Lakeshore Drive. That's traffic. I'm Jim Telemonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast will have sunshine throughout the morning, hazy clouds midday, and cloudy with a squirt of rain or two through the early evening. High 59 and more rain overnight, low 47, light rain. And a good chance of rain tomorrow, about a 50% chance, high 57. 44 at O'Hare, next news at 7, and Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. When Governor Greg Abbott of Texas lifted the statewide face mask mandate down there, that was in early March, it was called Neanderthal thinking by one President Joe Biden.
Oh, yeah.
A month and a half later, newly identified coronavirus cases in Texas have fallen by more than 50%. Daily deaths have dropped even more precipitously than that. Meanwhile, in states lorded over by lockdowners, like, say, the Eva Peron of East Lansing there in Michigan, states with stricter COVID-19 regulations have seen spikes in daily new cases, not the pattern you would expect to see if government-imposed restrictions played a crucial role in curtailing the pandemic, as the lockdowners continue to advocate. How does one explain that other than that those proposing the lockdowns are wrong, at least in terms of what they think, based on public statements, that they're doing, that they think they're going to accomplish? For more on this, we're pleased to be joined again by Professor Martin Kulldorf. He's a professor at Harvard Medical School and Brigham and Women's Hospital as well. Professor, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Surprised that the mask mandate didn't kill Texans and Texas, lifting it?
No, I'm not surprised. And actually, as a history buff, I think the Neanderthals are pretty cool. And I like Texans also. So I think that's pretty good.
And yet there's been a fivefold increase since March 1 in Michigan. Maine has seen a nearly threefold increase. Minnesota has seen a doubling. So what's happening in those northeastern and midwestern states that's not happening in, say, like Texas or Florida?
Well, for example, Maine never had among the lowest from before. So it will come to each place sooner or later. So it came later to Maine. While Texas has a lot of immunity, mostly from natural infections, but also from vaccines a little bit now in the last few months.
And so the thinking about this both retrospectively and prospectively, as we stand here today, what should we understand about this continuing debate that rages about mask mandates for K through 12 kids, lockdown policies that will gradually allow for indoor this and indoor that? A very slow walk towards something resembling pre-pandemic America?
Well, putting masks on children is not a good thing. There's no public health evidence that it would work, and there are detrimental effects of doing it. So that's not a good policy. Children are not at risk for this disease, less risk than annual influenza, and they don't spread it very much. So there's absolutely no reason to put masks on children, and I think it's more harmful than beneficial for sure.
But don't you think it would be good to, as a way to, an incentive to get a vaccine, if the CDC said, yes, if you've been double vaccinated and waited 14 days, you do not have to wear a mask anymore. Do you ever see that happening in the near future?
I think that certainly there's no reason for people who are vaccinated and people who have had COVID to wear masks, that there's no sense to that. And if CDC has changed their policy to do that, that's fantastic.
Well, we want them to.
Yeah, if they would, right. This piece that you and Jay Bhattacharya wrote for the Journal just a couple weeks back, in part you wrote, the idea that everybody needs to be vaccinated is as scientifically basis as the idea that nobody does. COVID vaccines are essential for older, high-risk people and their caretakers and advisable for many others. Tyler Cohen, who's an economist over at George Mason, responded to that statement from the joint op-ed that you and Bhattacharya published. I wonder why he, you and Jay, cannot bring himself to say the average social value of a 16-year-old getting vaccinated is strongly positive. Instead, he has to walk around the issue and play down the value of near universal COVID vaccination. So he's suggesting that, maybe, not maybe, yes, younger people are less at risk than older people, but there's still a positive correlation societally for having 16-year-olds, for example, get vaccinated. So why not say that and push universal vaccination?
Well, I don't think that's clear that that's the case. So therefore, and I don't think children need to be vaccinated. They are not at risk for this disease, as we said, and having it naturally, most of them are asymptomatic, and others only mildly symptomatic. And we still don't know very much about the adverse reactions to these vaccines. We know a little bit now, but so for older people, there's a clear benefit. And every young person, every 16-year-old who gets this vaccine means that an older person, either in the US or in the rest of the world, will not get it because there's still a shortage of vaccines. So it's better to wait with younger adults like that, and maybe at some point we know more, so we know what the cost-benefit ratios are. But at this point, I don't think we do know that. But the key thing now is to vaccinate older people. They are the ones who are at risk of dying from this disease, and they need vaccinations.
Well, starting today in Chicago and in the state of Illinois, now you can just walk in. If you have a 16-year-old and older, you can just walk into any place and get a vaccine. You don't have to get an appointment. So I don't think we have a vaccine shortage here. But I know that around the world, there is, like, my friend from Utrecht, Holland, is coming in Monday, flying in to get a vaccine because she doesn't even know anybody who's been vaccinated in her community. Why is there such a shortage there in Europe compared to the U.S.?
Well, the U.S. and the U.K. have had a lot of vaccinations, but there's a shortage in other parts of Europe, and there's a shortage in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. And public health is something that is global. We have to think about it globally. So there's a lot of older people in other countries who have not been vaccinated, and we have to help them and make sure that they can get vaccinated, because otherwise a lot of people will die.
Well, right. I mean, perhaps most urgently, what's happening in India with the exponential increase in cases there, and obviously this is that a lot of India is densely populated. It's poor. There's, I think it's one of the world leaders in air and water pollution. So you have all sorts of problems there. So rather than worrying about vaccinating your 9-year-old, we should be global citizens, like we're always, like some of those lockdowners always talk about us being, and focus on areas where you could really have a public health crisis like India.
Exactly.
Well, and so the Great Barrington Declaration crew, you and Professor Gupta and Professor Bhattacharya, how do you guys think that you've stood up over the last year in terms of how you conceive this and versus everybody else trying to get their hands around it, and how you've adjusted based on what we're understanding both from research and real world experience, and also how you've adjusted or not adjusted to all the criticism you've received from sort of the established orthodoxy on COVID policy?
Well, I think we have been proven right that these lockdowns were not effective in protecting the older high-risk people. And because people thought they would protect them, other standard public health measures that would have really prevent the disease in the older people were never implemented. And that's very tragic, I think, and that's why we have over 500,000 deaths in the United States, because we didn't properly protect older, high-risk people. So I think we've been vindicated. The one thing that sort of changed when we wrote the Great Barrington Declaration in October, there were no vaccines, and we didn't know when or if the vaccines would be coming. So when the vaccines came, it became, of course, obvious that vaccine was a primary way to protect the older people. And it was important to quickly vaccinate as many of the old people as possible, as well as, for example, nursing home staff, so that they don't infect the residents.
So today the CDC is going to announce that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, after a 2-week pause, is all of a sudden safe again, and they're going to be starting to administer those shots. But what were the dangers of pausing the J&J vaccine?
Well, I don't know if we know what CDC will decide, because the ACIP Advisory Committee of Immunization Practices is meeting today to take a vote. But there was an issue of a very rare blood clot disease in the brain among younger people. There were 6 women, all below the age of 50. So that was a real adverse reaction, and they are better than alternative for young people to take the Pfizer or Moderna. But there was no evidence for increased risk in the older people. So until there are increased risk for older people, it's sort of as damaging vaccine confidence to temporarily withdraw this vaccine. And it means that a lot of old people would not have gotten it. And while anybody can go in and get the vaccine in most parts in the United States now, there are still many old people who haven't gotten it. And especially among the more vulnerable, less affluent people, there needs to be a better outreach. And the J&J vaccine is very important for them, because one shot is enough. So they don't have to come back. So it's an ideal vaccine for those who are harder to reach older people that won't sort of come to an appointment 3-4 weeks later to get the second shot.
He is Martin Kulldorf. He is a professor at Harvard Medical School, as well as Brigham and Women's Hospital, that is. Professor Kulldorf, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Always my pleasure.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Their call for unity is a joke.
News.
The important question is not whether you're right or they're right, but why we shouldn't have the right to flip the channel.
Fuels. Opinion.
We have got to stop making it a crime to be a Republican.
News. Opinion. Insight. On AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. New York City is suing 3 major oil companies. Southwest Airlines has turned the corner on the pandemic. Long-term mortgage interest rates are falling again. Those stories next.
The following are real-life stories from Trinity Debt Management.
My story begins with debt, a lot of debt.
I used my credit cards as a source of income.
It was not a good situation.
I couldn't pay my bills.
The interest on the cards was really high.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976.
I initially was scared to call, and immediately I felt relief.
They contacted all of our creditors, and they put us on a plan for success.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
I've been able to pay off close to $15,000.
We're doing a lot better.
Please pick up the phone and see how affordable and easy it is to pay off your debt.
It's a godsend.
We're debt-free for keeps.
Call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976. That's 1-800-990-6976.
New York City, already a national laughingstock thanks to the antics of radical Mayor Bill de Blasio, is now suing oil companies ExxonMobil, BP, and Shell as part of a climate change agenda. City officials challenging the oil giants for supposedly, quote, misrepresenting their fuels as cleaner and for advertising suggesting they are leaders in the effort to stop climate change. After watching business plunge due to the China virus last year, Southwest Airlines earned $116 million in the first quarter. Mortgage interest rates falling for a third straight week. Freddie Mac reporting the benchmark 30-year home loan rate dropped to 2.97%. The 15-year rate fell to 2.29% as interest in 15-year rates has increased for people looking to refinance their existing mortgages. Please join me 3 times each weekday for my updates from the Salem Radio Network. This is the Lou Dobbs Financial Report.
Well, remember, it was about a year ago we had that historic rainfall and many people's basements and crawl spaces flooded. And our friends at Permaseal certainly remember that. As much as they love helping homeowners solve their problems, they'd prefer to help you avoid them. So today's a great time to call Permaseal at 800-421-SEAL for a free foundation inspection. Their inspectors will identify any potential problems you may have with your basement, the walls, the floors, the window wells, the sump pumps, and they'll provide you with a written estimate on any existing problems that you keep living with. They're also trained and certified to identify structural problems or other concerns that you may have. Yes, the inspection is free, but the peace of mind that you'll have when the thunderstorms come rolling through is priceless. Permaseal has earned an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and has helped over 450,000 homeowners